Hello, welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life, and we're talking about this small slate we've got tonight. Just 6 games, a couple aces on the mound. We've got a game in Coors with what looks like it's going to be 2 pretty bad depleted offenses, but certainly some run potential there. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun night. Lots of GPP action, I think, for the most part for a lot of people, but definitely some big arms. So we'll start here at the top. We've got Matt Harvey, Corey Kluber, and Chris Sale. Chris Sale coming in as the cheapest of the guys. It's $9,500. He's my favorite option. Considering price or even not considering price, I like that he's the cheaper one. Obviously, we know Cleveland struggles against left-handed pitching, and they're about league average this year, but I think those numbers might be a little bit inflated. And Chris Sale hasn't faced very many lefties this year at all. I believe it's only 16 batters he's faced total. And, I mean, he was absolutely dominant against lefties. Has not allowed a home run over the last 2 years against lefties. None last year, none the year before. So, I mean, he's a guy that is just absolutely death on lefties. So I'm a huge fan of Chris Sale tonight against all these lefties in Cleveland.
Yeah, it's really hard not to like him. And the one guy that Cleveland has that has been crushing lefties this year, Ryan Rayburn, I believe is questionable. Did he get, what is it, yesterday he got hurt?
I think either yesterday or the day before. They've got it as day-to-day. Oh, yeah, Friday, actually.
Yeah, he banged his knee in the outfield or something, I think.
Yeah.
And, yeah, he's questionable. So, I mean, if they can't get him in the lineup, there's going to be a ton of lefties in the lineup against Sale. Like you mentioned, he's dominated lefties in his career. Cleveland's been all right against lefties, especially for a team that has so many left-handed hitters. But they aren't anything special. Sale finally looked pretty good in his last start. Still not up to what we'd expect from him for the most part, but it looks like he's coming around.
Yeah, absolutely. And that last game, really what he needed, I think, for some confidence. Obviously, he missed spring training or most of spring training, so that was he had needed some time to get in the groove. And I mean, he looked incredible in that last start. And so, with that being said, I think that he's obviously one of the better hitters today. And if you're looking at the numbers with the Indians, they look at like league average against lefties, but you got Michael Brantley with a ridiculous 504 WOBA against lefties, Ryan Rayburn at 458, and then it's a whole lot of not very good. I mean, Michael Bourne, 260, Jason Kipnis, 273, Santana, 275, Chisenhall, 282. So, I mean, I think those numbers are really skewed. They look on paper as league average, but I don't consider them league average against lefties at all.
Yeah, they're definitely not. Sale's the obvious play here. I mean, a decent favorite. Not a huge one because he's facing Kluber, who we all saw was great last time out, but I mean, 9,500 almost feels like a steal for a guy that had 11 strikeouts last time out, has double-digit strikeout upside every time he takes the mound, especially against a team that's struggling against lefties. I mean, it just seems like too good of a price on a slate that it's just not really that big.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people will be on Kluber, obviously, because of his last start. I mean, I don't think he's a bad play by any means against a weak offense outside of Jose Abreu, but at the same time, I think his ownership's probably going to be pretty high tonight coming off that enormous game, so I mean, he's a fine tournament play. There's not really any other options. I mean, you're going with those 2 guys, Matt Harvey, and I mean, there's not much else. So I think you certainly, especially on DraftKings, got to have 2. I don't know that I'll be pairing Kluber and Sale. I'll probably be going with like Sale, and then if I'm going cheap, Ruby De La Rosa at 6,900. Been really good against righties, obviously mostly righties in that Miami lineup there. So I think if I'm going cheap, I'll probably roll him with Sale.
Yeah, definitely. I think I probably feel the same way. I mean, there's just, like, not a lot to love.
No.
It's kind of tough here. I mean, there's a couple guys that I don't mind their prices. Like, I just don't feel great about anybody. I mean, we got Cole Hamels pitching at Colorado today. Hard to feel good about that, even with probably, Tulo and Dickerson out of the lineup today. I think they're both questionable.
Yeah, they're both questionable. Obviously, Morneau already out, too. So, I mean, it's any other scenario, Colorado against a lefty, Cole Hamels pitching against him in any other park, and you'd probably love him tonight, but not Coors Field.
Right. It makes it so tough, especially at 8,900 when you can just pay 600 more to get Sale. I mean, he's going to be way under-owned in GPPs just because he's at Coors. Maybe he has a nice game. Probably a decent couple bullet guy in GPPs.
Yeah.
I don't feel good about him in cash games. The good news is the wind is blowing in there. Directly from center field, so that's a nice advantage for him too. I mean, everything's in his favor except that he's pitching at Coors Field. So
yeah, that's a good point.
He's worth a look in GPPs for sure. Matt Harvey facing St. Louis, one of the better offenses so far this year. You never feel really good taking any pitcher against St. Louis. He is a small favorite in this one though. Actually, a bigger favorite than Sale. So that's a little bit of an interesting play. The over/under on that game is what makes that kind of enticing. I think it's only, what, 6.5 right now. I mean, with the favorite, I mean, they're projecting St. Louis for what? A little under 3 runs, probably, something like that with that money line.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard not to feel great about that. It's just not a team that strikes out a lot. It feels like there's not a lot of upside. Like, you're going to feel really good if he gives up 3 runs over 7 innings and strikes out 7 guys. And that's not nearly good enough for 10-6. I mean, it's just not. And I mean, maybe he has a little bit of upside, but you're almost getting his upside guaranteed with Sale today for a cheaper price. So, I mean, I think Sale's going to be a super heavily owned guy in cash games, probably over-owned in GPPs, where that's where you're going to want to swerve and play some of these guys like Harvey and Hamels and see if you can catch some lightning in a bottle or something with one of those guys who are in pretty good situations, but just they can't compete with what Sale's bringing to the table today.
Yeah, and I mean, especially like you said about Harvey, yes, he is a favorite, but Vegas not projecting the Mets to score a lot of runs off Lackey either. So,
right.
You're going to need that win if you're paying 10.6K for him tonight. And it's like you said, he's a decent favorite, but no guarantees there. So, pitching definitely going to be interesting tonight. Like we said, most of those cheap guys, we'll get to those in a minute. I'm sure we're going to be wanting to target a lot of them too. All right, moving on here to catcher. I'm probably going to be playing a catcher from Coors Field. We'll see who all's in the lineup. Wilton Rosario's got massive power against lefties at $3,300. I think he's an interesting play, more of a tournament play. Guys like Carlos Ruiz against Jordan Lyles at $3,900 are interesting. But also, I'm going to be looking to see which one of these other Colorado catchers end up in the lineup. I mean, you got Nick Hundley at $3,200, Michael McHenry at $29. I think my cash game catcher is probably going to be whichever one of those two guys is behind the plate tonight.
Yeah, pretty hard to argue with that. I mean, lefty-righty matchup for both of them. Feel pretty good about that. There's not a lot to love at catcher today. Evan Gattis is the guy I'm looking at if I'm not going and looking at Coors Field. Facing a lefty in Pomeranz. Looked pretty good again over the weekend, only $3,700. I mean, you can always look at Vogt. Get at Houston. I've been loving playing hitters at Houston this year. It looks like more and more of a hitter's park every time they play there lately. McCullers the righty, nothing special. So I think that's a pretty decent play there too. Probably him or Gaddis is going to be my cash game play, especially if I'm going a little bit cheaper at pitcher. But like you said, if you're spending up at pitcher in 2 different spots, you're probably going to want to go for one of these cheaper guys at Coors.
Yeah, I think that's where the difference is going to be, because it's going to be hard to pay $4K for a catcher if you've got 2 $10K pitchers. But it's going to be interesting to see differences. I mean, these short slates are always fun to see where everyone goes in cash games. So I'm with you there. Those are the top guys, but I think I'm probably going to need to save money there because there's some big bats elsewhere that I want.
Yep.
Moving on to first base. You got to like Ryan Howard as a lefty against Jordan Lyles tonight. Ryan Howard, not a guy I love to play, but he's starting to swing a bat, obviously. Now he's in Coors Field. Lyles has struggles against lefties. Now, a lot of things going in his favor there. Elsewhere, Paul Goldschmidt's a great option, but, I mean, he's $5,300. You got Abreu against Corey Kluber, GPP only, of course, there. I like Lucas Duda a lot at $3,900, though.
Yeah, definitely. He's a really strong play. I mean, Duda's great. Howard's great. The guys at the top that are really expensive, like Cabrera and Goldschmidt, have okay matchups against guys that make mistakes, but not guys that I absolutely want to play them against. On DraftKings, Ryan Howard's price is pretty steep, but I mean, like you said, he's got a ton of power. He's been looking a little bit better lately. He's hit, I think, 3 home runs in the last 8 days or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe ride that hot streak a little bit. Duda has that nice price at $3,900 against Lackey. Outside of that, I mean, it's such a short slate. You're looking at a bunch of guys with catcher eligibility up here, like Rosario and Vogt, that I'd much rather play at catcher.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm probably going to be looking at one of those 2 guys that you mentioned, Howard or Duda. In GPPs, I'll probably look at Cabrera and Goldschmidt a little bit, just for the massive upside there.
Yeah, and if you wanted to go real contrarian, you could play Michael Kadire at $3,500 at first base, since there's not a ton of great cheap options. But
yeah,
I mean, I think he's more reserved for the outfield, but we'll get to that in a minute. I'm looking at second base, of course. You've got your options that you always have. You got D. Gordon in a fine spot against Ruby De La Rosa, who is great against righties, not good against lefties. $4,900 is a pretty steep price tag, but I think he's my favorite play if I'm paying up. If not him, obviously Jose Altuve there once again at $4,800 against the lefty. Not a very good one right now, and Drew Pomeranz either. But at the same time, it's going to be hard to pay $5K for a second baseman in cash games. But I'm going to do whatever I can to try to get probably D. Gordon into my cash games tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get Altuve in there. I think one of those two guys is a great cash game play. Obviously, Utley's a GPP play here. You can avoid some of these other guys like Kipnis and Kinsler. Not a big fan. Yeah. Scooter Jeanette's playing a lefty today. Probably going to avoid him as a value play.
Jeanette's gone now. He got sent down this morning.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Don't even have to worry about him being a bum and batting second today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, it's pretty thin at second base today outside of that top four. I mean, you probably either, like I said, want to spend up in cash games, almost $5K for Altuve or Gordon. Outside of that, at least probably the GPP play for me if you're trying to save. I mean, there's so many lefty-lefty matchups. Valbuena's a guy that has power, but he's facing a lefty. Not anything I'm really excited about there. Daniel Murphy would probably be the other value play I'd look at. He's pretty good against righties. Lackey hasn't been anything special this year, only 3,600. So, I mean, if you really needed value play behind Utley, who I'm not really excited about playing even in GPPs, I think he's probably the way I'd go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That was the other guy on my list as well. Moving on to third base, Nolan Arenado at $4,200 is a nice tournament play. I don't know that I'll play him in my cash games because it is Cole Hamels still, but he's got tons of power. I really like Freddie Galvis tonight in that big ballpark, but $4,100 is so steep. I would obviously still prefer him at shortstop even if I am playing, but Aramis Ramirez is probably the guy I'm going to go with here at $3,900 against Kyle Lopestein.
Yeah, I got to like him against the lefty. Matt Carpenter is the guy I'm probably going to play in cash games, even with it being Harvey at $4,100. I mean, I know Harvey's good, but, I mean, Carpenter's just been phenomenal, and he just feels like a really strong cash game play at that price. I mean, I don't see Harvey just totally shutting him down. I do like Arenado a ton at that same price point, basically, for GPPs, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not often we see Matt Carpenter be the fifth most expensive third baseman. Obviously, it is due to that matchup, but like you said, I mean, he's just such a damn good hitter that you want to get yourself some exposure. And really, I mean, you're looking at talent-wise in these hitters. Obviously, Miggy up there with third base eligibility, but, I mean, Matt Carpenter, I think, is by far the best hitter of any of these guys at third base tonight. So, I mean, you gotta like that. As we move on to shortstop, we wish that we could move just past it because it's terrible. Troy Tulowitzki may not play tonight. I mean, if he plays at $4,100, obviously he's a great tournament option. Maybe even cash games if you wanted to go that route since he is at home against the lefty. But I don't know. It's hard to say if he's going to be in. He's tough to pay for as well. Is there anyone cheap that you feel okay with playing here? Because I don't like any of these cheap options.
Not really. I mean, if Tulo's out, Noah, or however you say his name, is probably the way I'm going as a cheap option just because he's 2,100 and you can just do whatever you want with the rest of your lineup.
Good point.
The only other guy I really think is a decent play is Elian Herrera if he's near the top of the lineup. He's been pretty good against lefties so far this season. I think he's been hitting like sixth against them most of the time, only 2,600. That's probably the other way I'd go, but I don't feel great about it. He's not a particularly good hitter with a ton of upside. He's just... I mean, he can hit like
he's there and he's cheap.
Yeah, like he's like you're gonna be kind of happy if he goes 1 for 4. That's
like,
about the best thing that I can say about him.
Yeah, I mean that's about it. What shortstop has come to. We know how it is a lot of times on 12, 13 game slates. How it's bad. 6-game slate tonight. A bunch of good pitchers on the mounds. Not a lot of great spots for these guys either.
I will say to counteract my dislike of him, he did hit a home run 3 days in a row last week. So I mean, I guess he's got a little bit of upside.
But don't count on it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And, I mean, that is a pretty big ballpark in Detroit, too. So that's going against him. Moving on to the outfield, a lot of injury concerns here. Corey Dickerson with that plantar fasciitis. They were saying maybe DL. They say maybe he gets at-bats. I'm not counting on it. I can't imagine he plays tonight. Carlos Gomez got hit in the head with a pitch yesterday. They say he's fine, but he's officially day-to-day. I really like Ryan Braun against the lefty there in Detroit at $4,900. I think if I'm paying up, that's the way I'm going because, I mean, you look at these other guys, they're either injured or you got Michael Brantley. Obviously a great tournament play because he mashes lefties, but it's Chris Sale, one of the best in the game. So it's got to be Ryan Braun for me if I'm going expensive.
Yeah, I like Giancarlo Stanton a little bit too.
Yeah.
He's okay. I just don't know if I want to pay all the way up for him. A couple of these other guys seem a little bit overpriced, especially in the Colorado-Philly game. Like, I don't want to pay $4,300 for Ben Revere.
No, not at all.
I mean, he's a guy that even if you extend his power 50 feet for playing in course, he's probably still not going to hit a home run.
Not even in batting practice.
So, like, he's not a guy that I really want to take that price increase on. I don't mind George Springer a lot, but 4,700 feels a little steep also. Grady Sizemore is probably the one Philly guy that I feel okay about at his price. 3,100 at Coors, probably hitting in the middle of that lineup against a righty. You got to feel okay about him there.
Yeah.
I'll make my obligatory mention of Jeff Francoeur just because.
Waiting for it.
Yeah, just because he's at Coors, has some decent power. I mean, I don't really love him either, but I mean, you can get a pretty cheap Philly stack. But I mean, everyone's going to have that stack running in GPPs at some point because it's so easy to get, and you can just load up the pitchers still.
Yeah.
Especially if you leave Ben Revere out of that, I think it's a pretty solid stack there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's such a steep price for someone with no power, like you mentioned. Maybe hits one in the gap, gets a triple, but that's about his upside there. Josh Reddick's an interesting tournament option against a guy making his first start at $4,200. I think he's an interesting guy. Chris Davis has power, but at the same time, it's Detroit, so it's a big-time pitcher's park there. Makes me kind of not like him as much. But Christian Yelich I like against Robbie De La Rosa at $4,000. I think he's a great tournament option here, too.
Yeah, I like that, too. That's a good call.
And I'll throw out one more guy here, Curtis Granderson at $3,700 against Lackey. Lackey, he's about, I guess he's slightly above average. He's not a great pitcher, not a guy that's going to overpower anybody. We know Granderson's got that power, and he's been hitting the ball pretty well recently. Had a leadoff home run, I believe it was yesterday, maybe the day before. But
yeah,
he's a guy that can string together some hits. He's got double-digit DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4. So, I mean, he's, as far as a $3,700 guy goes in tournaments, there's no one else around that price I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Anybody else you want to throw out before we get out of here?
The only other guy I had down here was Drew Stubbs for 3,200. Assuming one of those outfielders is out for Colorado, Stubbs should be totally fine. He's really strong against lefties. Still only 3,200 because he is facing Hamels. Not an elite play for me, but for 3,200 at Coors, probably hitting in the middle of that Rockies lineup, especially if Dickerson's out. You got to think he's probably hitting somewhere 2 through 5.
Almost half so, at this point.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, I mean, for 3,200, that's a pretty strong play.
Yeah, absolutely with you there. All right, find us on Twitter at DF Cafe and check out all of our content for tonight's action at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll see you tomorrow.